Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And today, my guest is me. I'm doing a solo podcast, and I'm going to talk with you about my new book, The Sale Ready Company, what it takes to create a business that someone else would want to own, even if you have no intention of selling. And the no intention of selling is where we're really going to put the focus on today. So let's jump right in and we'll get started. And we're going to go for hopefully about 20 minutes. And then, as usual, you get to go and go to work. So here we are. So the first thing you might want to be interested in, okay, Josh, you wrote a book a couple of years ago. Most people write one book and say that's enough. Why did you write a second book? Well, if you read the first book, you would know that there's probably more story to be told because in the first book, we take a successful small manufacturing company and becomes a personally and economically sustainable manufacturing company. Now, a lot of people might want to stop there, but the truth is, at some point, everybody who owns a business is going to have to transition out of the business to what comes next in life. Now, sometimes what comes next in life is you die, but more often than not, it's something you may have a different interest in, or it's just time for you to leave and transfer the business either to your managers, your kids, or even sell it to a third party. The truth is, transitions for a business owner happen a lot. Now, I'm a certified financial transitionist, and one of those things we learn is that there's four major transitions that happen in your life, or could happen, that which we work around. One is divorce, loss of a spouse, retirement, or sale of a business. But the truth is, the sale of a business is just one of the transitions that business owners go through. They have to get ready to transition their business. They have to get ready to have a sustainable company. They have to get ready to become a great delegator. Those are all things that are part of creating a great business. And they're all transitions. So every 3, 4, 5 years, you as a business owner are going to go through a major transition. Maybe you should learn what they are and what the stages are and how to go through them. And the truth is, I really enjoy telling this story about the Aardvark family. I've been writing about the Aardvarks for 25, 30 years as case studies just because of the amusement to start off with. But this particular family, I've been having a lot of fun playing with, and I've been finding them really interesting. My bet is you will also. So the second thing is, I wrote a parable. And people always ask me, and people around business parables have really strong feelings. If you're a publisher, you're not going to publish a parable because nobody buys them, is what publishers think. And there are some people who only want to do how-to books. But the truth is, the business owners I know like to read stories. They like to be told stories. Stories stick with them better than a how-to book. So a parable essentially is a fictional work with a lesson in it, or lessons. And we have many lessons that we go through the book that you're going to learn while you're doing that. And my guess is you're going to really enjoy reading about the lessons. The truth is, it's more fun for you to read a story, and it's more fun for me to write the story. So you're going to like the parable format. It's a story. You're going to be able to read it in a couple of hours and you'll walk away with some great take-home value. And that's what my purpose was, and that's what my goal was when writing the book. In the book, we're going to learn that, the first book, John did a financial plan and we figured out what he needed and what he had to do to get there. And then we get to the second book 5 years later and something has happened. We have to redo the financial plan. You see, a financial plan is not something that needs to be all by itself. It's the planning process that's really important. And the planning process goes on and on and on and on. It's not something we do once and we're done with. It's something that we do over and over again. So the truth is, here's what happened. John's company started making a lot more money. Now, what happens when people make a lot more money? They tend to often spend more money along with it. And that's exactly what John did. John spent some more money and he needed to learn, do we have to change our lifestyle, which is not something I would recommend people do, or do I need to find a way to have more money that's available for me in retirement? Well, we chose door number 2 in the book, and you'll find out why we chose door number 2 and what door number 2 can do for you. So, the thing here that's really important I want you to understand is that even though we're talking about a financial plan, we're really talking about financial planning, and planning is around the direction, not a destination. We want to make sure that John is moving in the right direction. And yes, he is moving in the right direction as we go through the book and as we go through his story. And we find out that John doesn't want to leave the business tomorrow. He actually wants to leave the business in 4.5 years. Now, the reason we use 4.5 years is 5 years is sort of will never happen. 7 years is too long to think about, and we're not going to be ready in 3 years. So 4.5 years just felt like the right amount of time John needed to get ready and do the things that Aaron, his consultant and coach, mentor, thinking partner, helps him understand. Now, in this book, we have a new character. His name is George. George becomes a plant manager, and we have major conflict between George and John's son, Adam. Now, why did George appear in the first place? I mean, this is a nice company. Do we need more people? Well, as a business grows, you need to bring in more talent. And that talent often comes from the outside. And sometimes that talent has big company experience, which George does. And he doesn't really understand that small companies don't run with the bureaucracy or the rules that big companies do. They kind of feel like they're a bit dysfunctional. And George is having a hard time getting his arms around this. Now, the plant manager, Janice, and he, the chief operating officer, Janice and George, are working really well together, but they're having a major problem, especially George, with John's son, Adam. And we have to work that out through the book. And we find out during the book that there are things that happen that allow George to continue with the company, and Adam hopefully will end up prospering, but we'll find out. And, the truth is, Adam, who is John's son, is a brilliant jerk. He's great at doing what he does technically, but he drives everybody around him absolutely 100% crazy. So when that happens, we need to have a way with dealing this. Now, if it's just an employee, it's pretty easy. You just say, look, you can't be here anymore, and you move on. But if it's a family member, that's a whole different kettle of fish. We have mom to consider. We have the lifestyle to consider. He is actually my, John's son, and John doesn't want him to go off and be, terrible, but he just needs to solve what we call the Adam problem. Now, the fifth thing that I want to talk about today is Anne. Anne is the mother. She has a major role in the book. In the first book, Anne was there. We had some conflict with Anne. The second book, we have major conflict with Anne that needs to be worked out before we're going to work forward. Here's the issue. Your spouse is a very, very important part of whatever it is your business creates. And John learns this. And Anne has two issues. She actually has more than two issues, but there's two big issues. One is, how is her son Adam going to be treated fairly? Now, we know that Adam, or in her opinion, has never been treated fairly. Her husband has always been too hard on him. He's never accepted Adam for what he's done. And frankly, Adam is kind of a screw up. He never did go to college. He barely graduated from high school. He's incredibly good with his hands, but he doesn't like studying, never liked studying. And that caused a major conflict in the family with John and Adam growing up. And that conflict continues to grow today and becomes bigger and bigger. We finally come up with a way of solving the Adam problem, which makes Anne happy. And that's the important thing. If we don't pay attention to what moms want or dads want, the spouse that's outside the business, we're going to have some major problems along the way. And that's something that we just don't want to have happen. I want to make sure in this book that Adam was dealt with a way that mom was going to be happy. I had a choice when I was writing. I could solve the problem by firing Adam, and that would have made mom really unhappy, and she probably would have blown up everything that was going on. We found a different way, and in the book, you're going to learn there are more options than bad child stays in the business or a bad child leaves the business. There are subsets within each of those that you can use that might make us successful. And in the book, you're going to learn what those are. Now, you have to understand the concern of the spouse that's out of the business when the spouse in the business starts talking about retiring. The spouse in the business might be wondering what's next in their life, and that's step 8 in how to leave your business, or the 8 steps of leaving your business in style. But the truth is, the spouse in the business is wondering, what am I going to do with this person hanging around the house all the time now? For the last 30 years or 25 or 40 years, he or she has been in business and they've been there for 50, 60 hours a week. Now they're going to hang around the house. Well, I have a life that I put together outside of that. How am I going to take and integrate that? I love my spouse, but I have my life too, and I don't want my life disrupted. So we learn about how that gets handled. And it's a big deal and needs to be handled if we're going to be successful in transitioning the business. Now, the 6th thing in the book, which I think is really interesting, is that we have conflict between the siblings. I bet it's a big surprise to you that you actually find that there might be conflict with the siblings. Gee, I've never heard of that happening in a business. So you might want to be thinking about that. But when siblings work in a business, family and work issues always pop up. And because the family issues are tied into the work issues, they often cause some real problems along the way. And that's true here also. The lessons of Adam are not going to be as unusual as you think. There might be a spouse in the business that's competent. There might be a spouse in the business, a child in the business that's not so competent. And frankly, we need to be able to work with both. And finally, we have Alicia, who is John's daughter, and she has some issues herself. She has an MBA, she's smart, she seems to be picking up things well. She's done a really good job with marketing the company, but now we're moving her into a new role. And that new role that we're going to introduce in the book is what's called Chief Revenue Officer. And it's a role that too many businesses don't think about. We have people who are sales managers, we have people who are marketing managers, or we have a marketing group, we have a sales group, we have them together, but nobody talks about customer service. Isn't customer service part of that revenue process that we have? So we come up with her, and Alicia's going to become a Chief Revenue Officer, and she's worried about learning the skill set that she'll be successful. After all, she's only got 4.5 years to learn what it needs to take to become the next CEO of the company. So that leads us to number 7 that we want to talk about, which is Janice, who's our Chief Operating Officer. Now, Janice has a bunch of concerns, and her concerns are really pretty good and solid concerns. First of all, Janice is what we call a leapfrog manager. One of her main jobs, besides making sure the company runs smoothly and products get taken care of and sales are taken care of and we have enough money to pay for everything we need, which is what the Chief Operating Officer needs to be paying attention to, what we find out that she has some concerns also. And one of her big concerns is what happens to her. It's been pretty clear and it's been said to her that her job is to be the leapfrog manager. Now, what's a leapfrog manager? A leapfrog manager is the manager who first is training the sibling to take over the business. And then eventually that sibling becomes, that child becomes the CEO. And with this, when the CEO becomes the owner of the company, now that person, Janice, the COO, Chief Operating Officer, has been training her for 4, 5, 6 years to take over the role. Well, what happens to Janice now that she has a new boss? She had this great relationship with John. It took him a long time to get there. Now she's got to forge a new relationship with Janice. And frankly, she's worried about it. What if it doesn't work out? What happens to her? After all, she left, a pretty solid, good, a large company job to come to work for the small company because she thought it would be interesting and it would help her get to her goals of becoming financially independent more easily. So Janice wants to retire from the company. She wants to make this be her last job. So she needs to see a path that's put out for her of how she becomes the person, and this becomes her last job, and she goes to the last pass, and she can ride off in the sunset knowing that she's done a great job helping the next generation get ready to take over the business. And, Alicia has concerns about her skill level, but She doesn't feel like she can talk about it because she feels like if she does talk about it, it's going to show weakness, and she can't show weakness. So we get into the reason that it's really important for us to be vulnerable in business and let people know what we're good at, what we're not good at, and what we need help on. And Janice will learn to help Alicia, but Alicia needs to learn how to ask for help when she needs it. And we're going to work about that. Number 8, in the book, and I actually should have started with this, is that Aaron, the consultant, makes everybody go through what's called the alignment conversation. Now, in the first book, we did the alignment conversation with a couple people. In the second book, we do it with a lot more people. Now, if I'm just working with an owner of a company for the first time, that might be the only person I do an alignment conversation with. But as we move and we start working with more members of a family and more members of a business, we really need to have an alignment conversation with each of them. And the alignment conversation very simply is, where are you now? Where do you want to be in the future? What's the gap between those two? And if you could fill the gap, what's the value for you, both on a personal and an economic basis? So that's where we get into the world of sustainability, business sustainability. And the world of business sustainability is two sides. So we do this, and the reason that we do this, it puts all our characters into the expert chair. Now, the truth is, Aaron brings a lot of knowledge with him. He's a coach, he's a mentor, he's a thinking partner. He does all those things along the way with John and with the other members of the team. But the truth is, he needs to recognize the expertise of all the people in the company. And what are they experts about? Themselves. You're an expert about yourself. So when we work with people, and in the book, we go through the alignment conversation so we know what everybody needs for success. And we look to see what we can get to get everyone on the same team so we're all going in the same direction. That's what the goal of the alignment conversation is, and it's why it's so important. So by doing an alignment conversation with everybody, Aaron's going to know what has to happen for the engagement to be a success. So number 9 point, which I think is really an important one, is why do we need a sustainable business before we become some sale ready? Businesses go through what I call a success path. First, they start off and there's just a startup and you're trying to get some business through the door, and you're going to do anything to get some business through the door. And that's just a startup. But the next stage of that is you actually go into a business that's, sort of has some sort of success. There's regular cash flow. You're taking a paycheck. You might have a reasonable standard of living. May not be as good as you want, but it's certainly something you can live with. You get to take vacations, everyone. They're not always fancy vacations, but you get to. So now we have something that's a little bit of a success, but now we need to make it personally and economically sustainable. And we need to do that so you don't get burned out. If you're doing the same tactical things over and over and over and over again, even if you're not very good at it, you can do it for 30 years. And after 30 years, you're just going to be sick of it. So if you don't make your business sustainable, where you make yourself operationally irrelevant, you systematize your business, you've got great values you work with, and you've got a recurring revenue stream, well, if you don't do those things, you're just going to get burned out. But when you do those things, now you're ready to take the 8 steps to make your company sale ready, because you've probably made yourself a little bit more flexible than you were in the years before. So the last step is the business is sale ready. Now, the subtitle of the book is what it takes to create a business that someone would want to own, even if you have no intention of selling. That's a really important point. So the really important point is, once you make your company sale ready, here's what's likely going to happen. You will have no interest in transferring your business. Now, we haven't gotten there yet in the story, and we might find out that's what happens next time around. And we have a fight about that, especially in a family business or one where your managers are being groomed to take it over. It's a really big deal. Not covered in this book, but it's going to come up at some point. So we have to be ready for that. Then finally, we have the basis of the book is to create the 8 steps for a sale-ready company. And I'm betting you might be curious what they are. Well, first we start off is, what do you need? This is, how much money do you need? This is where the financial planning piece comes in. This is where we find out that John doesn't have enough and needs to make some more changes. The second thing is, what's the business worth? Well, there are definite drivers that drive the value of your business. Some drive them higher, some drive them lower. It depends who the buyer is or who you're going to transfer the business to. And we look at all these things. We say, if we can't get the business in shape to help you become financially free from the business, John, you're going to probably have to sell this to a third party. So your management team and your family needs to be aware of this. And your family includes your spouse. It's not just your children. Number 3 is, how do we increase the value of the business? Because frankly, there isn't a business that we're getting sale ready that doesn't need to do some things to look at the business to make sure they're sale ready. And when they do so, they'll make some changes along the way, which will increase the value of the business if we do it successfully. Number 4, who's going to buy it? Now, this is a big question. Now, in the book, we actually go through this question, and we spend a lot of time on who's going to buy it. You might think because John wants to do a transfer to his family, that it's a done deal. It's not. There's always options, and we need to look at the options and look at both sides of the business, the personal and the economic, to make sure both are filled. Now, sometimes we can't fill the personal because we have to do something to fill the economic. That's not going to be as good for us personally. So we need to look at what side is both. Do we want to reduce our lifestyle? Well, that's always a possibility. We could improve our lifestyle, and then we have to do another thing. So we have to decide where we're going to go, and we talk about that. Number 5 is your key people. Now, in the book, we're going to learn that we need to hold on to Jenna. She is an absolute key person, and we're going to have to make some things and some accommodations for her so her needs are met, as well as John, Alicia's, and the rest of the people in our story. And then number 6 is we want to learn how we protect the asset. Now, protecting the asset isn't just the money you get from selling the business. If someone's going to sue you, although that's a piece, that's a legal piece, but there's other pieces there, which is what happens if we transfer the business and the person that takes over the business doesn't do a good enough job to pay John? Because the truth is, if John sells the business to one of his children, they don't have any money. He's going to be holding the paper. He's going to have to depend on them running the business well enough to pay him, and his retirement depends on it. Well, what happens if they don't? We need to learn about some of the things along the way that the asset can be protected for. Number 7 is investing the proceeds. And again, this is about, I've gone from running a business where I have this amount of cash flow that gets created every year. I don't have to really think about it, but now I have this pot of money. I have to invest this pot of money, and I have to live off it. What do I need in this pot of money besides the proceeds from the business? Because as we learn from John, as he goes through his 4 boxes of financial independence drill, that the business by itself will not provide enough assets for him. And then finally, we get to answer the question, what's next in our life? We're going to have some things that John needs to do to test leaving the business to make sure that he's emotionally ready to leave the business and go through that major transition of transferring out of his business. So that's about the book. I think you're going to really like it. I really loved writing this book. It kind of almost wrote itself. It was so much fun. I had great help along the way. You don't write a book by yourself and then get something you're going to be really proud of. There's always help. I want to thank my editor, Ann Shabani. She just did a great job with me as she did on the first book, and I'm really thankful for that. Well, you can buy the book. It's available July 20th on all the places you would get a book. You can also go to our website, which is www.salereadycompany.com, and you go to our sales page for the book where you can buy it there, and you can get it for free plus shipping, which means you pay me $7.95. We ship you the book. It's a $14.95 book. You even have a chance to upgrade to our first book for $5.95 extra, and you get both books for the price of one. In addition, I've got these bonuses that we put together in a special resource center for you, which explain in detail all of the things that you need to do that we talk about in the book, The Sale Ready Company. So thanks a lot for stopping by today. I hope to see you back here really soon. I'm Josh Patrick. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code, and thanks a lot for stopping by. This was really fun. I hope you found it enjoyable also.